And we are back with the chosen journey, with the journey of baseball and life with Steve Karsay, Big Money Grip, and the chosen lawyer, Steve Karsay. Welcome back. Have you recovered yet from our talks of egos, Yankees, and closers?
Good to be back, and yes, it's time to move on to the next, and give some perspective to today's topics.
Well, you went from your playing days to your coaching days, closing to managing. So we're going to talk today about MLB managers, and I'm going to give you three names: Terry Francona, Kevin Cash, Grant Counsell. Why am I telling you these names?
Probably because I've had some interaction with all three of them at some point in my coaching career.
You interacted with Kevin Cash as well.
Kevin Cash was the bullpen coach for Terry Francona before he was the manager with the Tampa Bay Rays, who I was in spring training with. So interaction, yes, maybe not on the same staff, but had some interaction with him and was able to have some conversations with him.
Well, everybody that Steve Karsay touches turns to gold, apparently, because there are not only three people that have been in Steve Karsay's kitchen. It's a Cheers reference from a joke, haha, but also the three longest tenured managers in Major League Baseball. Steve, I remember like yesterday, Francona went to the Indians. I remember yesterday Kevin Cash went to the Rays as their manager. Well, Francona is now on top. October 6th, 2012. He is now the longest standing manager. And no surprise, he comes to Cleveland and they've been contending almost every single year. Not a shocker, is it?
No, not a shocker. I mean, he does a tremendous job of being able to, put guys into positions to succeed. And obviously, the organization's got to give you some talent. But the way he runs things and the expectations that he sets in spring training with his speech, gives guys hope, and it gives guys, the ability to go out there and play free, play hard, and as he says, be 1% better than the opposing team on any given day.
I mean, Francona really highly considered. I think Red Sox fans were quite upset when he left, and for good reason. And I think the Indians were very fortunate. I know he had history with his family in Cleveland, so there was a connection of coming home for him, and so nice to see. And that's where he'll end up finishing his career ultimately. But man, he helped turn around that Guardians. Sorry, did I say Indians? Guardians organization. It's I've been saying the Indians all the time. Guardians. Yes, the Guardians. So he helped usher in a great tenure for the Guardians, and wow. And then number two on the list, I didn't realize he's number two because I remember him getting hired like literally yesterday, and I'm thinking small market team, they're going to be taking a while with them and they're going to constantly rebuild. And yet all they do is find a way to contend. Kevin Cash is pulling the right strings at all times. The top management may change, the players may change, but he is number two, December 3rd, 2014. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin was under Terry Francona for a very long time, right? When he played for Boston, Francona was there. Has a lot of history with him. I believe he coached with him in Boston for 1 year or so before coming to the Guardians at the Indians at the time, now the Guardians. So he brought Cash over to be the bullpen coach, and then learned under Terry Tito, and then ultimately got the job when it opened up in Tampa Bay, and the rest is history. He's real good with numbers, and he deploys that. But I think at this point, he'll always be remembered for pulling Blake Snell in that game after he was dealing with that. So again, analytics plays a big point in that. He ran with that the whole year that year, and he just thought that was the right thing to do, good, bad, or indifferent.
I think was he not a bullpen coach for the Jays as well one year? I feel like he was, but I know he's coached around for a while. Like when he got that job, it wasn't straight out of his playing days, so he did have that experience. But imagine now sitting at number two, and when Francona does eventually decide, I mean, Francona's got the job as long as he wants it, essentially, and Kevin Cash will be the longest tenure manager. Good for him. And look, he does not get $300 million payrolls to play with, and it's got to be a really good feeling because to me it feels like the players are playing for him. He's managing for the players. It's just I've watched games and it's just a fun clubhouse, and everybody seems to be loose. They're working really hard. They're just a great team, top to bottom. Nice fundamentals. I'm sure he has a coaching staff that he gets to rely upon, and they rely upon him. Just a great fit, and it's showing in the standings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you put the right pieces together, and coaching staff is always a turnover, right? I mean, Matt Cataro went and is now managing the Kansas City Royals, so he was his bench coach who came from Cleveland with him to the Rays under Tito. So there's a lot of guys who filter in from these great managers who get jobs elsewhere, and some work out better than others, and some don't. But a lot of that depends on the talent that you have that you're able to put on the field.
Craig Counsell, the man who still gets carded probably when he goes to the pub after the game, if he ever goes. Don't know if he does or not, but he still looks really, really young. Looks exactly like he did when he was his playing days. He's number 3 on the list, May 4th, 2015. Uh, Now, you firsthand, of course, having spent time with Craig, what kind of staple is he in the Milwaukee community? How did the players feel about him? Like, it seems like he's been there for a long time and he's seen good teams, not so great teams, but he's survived it all. What is his secret?
Listen, he's a player's manager. I've had the most interaction, obviously, with Craig, being able to talk to him, sitting on a plane, talking baseball, strategic stuff. But his dad was a mainstay in the Brewers organization as well, and he grew up in the city of Wisconsin, or just on the outskirts of Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, in Whitefish Bay. So he has crazy ties to that community. He's been there his whole life. He played for them, for a few years. His experience as a player serves him well as a manager, and his temperament is second to none. I mean, again, I've been around a lot of managers, and Craig is just one who trusts his players, believes in his players, has high expectations, and is a guy that you can just sit down and talk to, and there's no bull, flowing from him. It's he's going to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, and you'll know where you stand.
Again, not big payroll market and not always that much to work with. They find a way, they give them the pieces as best as they can with the payroll, and Craig makes it happen. And they just always seem to be contending year in, year out. So I did not predict he'd be number 3 on that list. And you start going through from there, and it's not a coincidence. All these teams are tend to be contending. They have the longest standing managers. So happens. Scott Service is number 4 with the Seattle Mariners.
It's
Uh,
called stability, is what it's called. Having the same guy at the helm. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, no,
having the
please.
same guy at the helm, and the understanding of what the expectation is going in year out, and then knowing in spring training when you come back that manager is going to be there, and he knows his players, he knows his staff, he knows his front office, and the continuity just works really well. So it's not a secret that all of these teams who have long tenured managers seem to do really well. Uh, you know, Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and you look at where Bob Melvin went. He went from Oakland, and he got that 3 year deal with San Diego. This is his, you know, getting into it. It's just it hasn't clicked. And again, he has the best players. You know, you got the Machados, you got the Sotos, you got the Cronenworths, you got the Tatises, you got the Bogarts. I mean, you got Kim, you got this all these guys who are just superstars. But again, just because you have superstars doesn't mean that that's going to translate into world championships.
And you look at top to bottom. When you look at the bottom rung of a lot of the divisions, they have a lot of new managers. It just works out that way. The guy who I thought was number 1 on the list, I was so off, was Dave Roberts. Dave Roberts all the way down that list, and he was hired November 23rd, 2015. And man, he's given a big payroll. They've had great teams, but it is a tough thing when you play in Los Angeles and you get that payroll. Anything but a World Series, you're always seen as a failure. And Dave Roberts somehow just keeps doing it. And uh, I thought many times he wasn't going to survive, but they believe in him. And at the end of the day, there's that expression, he's not the one going on the field. At the end of the day, the players have to execute. And it's always easier to change what you said, one person than 25, right? But Dave Roberts has been able to withstand this.
Yeah, I mean, he's been given, 250, $300 million payrolls and pretty consistent players to perform over the course of that. It's just when they get into the playoffs, it's a decision here, a decision there that just doesn't go the Dodgers' way. And at the end of the day, they get bounced. Obviously, they won in 2020 in that shortened season. And who knows how that would have happened if they played 162. You just don't know, right? And people in the stands, it's a big deal. It was a weird season, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, that's that year they won it, and that goes in the books as a World Series champion. But the other years, the Dodgers have fallen short, and they haven't gotten to the promised land besides the shortened season. So, as you said, there's many times that I thought maybe he would get bounced and be fired, but again, they just felt like the continuity with him being at the helm and having relationships with the players that they already had there was a big deal, and they keep giving him opportunities to lead this team and try to win another World Series.
Another guy who almost didn't last, and they did keep him, was Brian Snitker. He was next on the list on the Braves, and the decision to keep him was a good one. They ended up winning a World Series, and then once you win that World Series, I think that gives you grace for a long time. And again, stability. Anthopoulos taking over there, and the young farm system that really panned out, plus free agents. Great situation. I mean, one of the best situations in baseball, I would say. If you're a manager and you get thrown into that scenario, and he's run with it. So they got to be happy both ways on that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. The ex GM of Toronto, right, Anthopoulos, he went over there. He's signing these guys. They have a core group of guys, like the Rileys, the Ozzy Albies, the Acunas, now Michael Harris, Olson, the catcher that they got in the trade from the A's. He signed to a 6-year deal. So they have this group of guys that they know are going to consistently perform year after year, and they have them under contract, until their early 30s, and then they're going to have to reboot after that. But they know year in and year out when they sign these young players and identify these young players who they think are going to be superstars, and they don't miss very often. It puts together a real good team, and it keeps your payroll at a pretty bare minimum when you can get a valued player, sign a long-term deal for under what his value is going to be year after year.
And there's a lot of veterans are coming down the list from there. But the one guy I wanted to touch upon, and we'll mention a couple of the other ones after, but one guy I really want to hit upon who was next on the list was Torey Lovello for the Diamondbacks. Really highly considered guy, interviewed for 1,000 managerial jobs. He's been there now for a while with Arizona. He got hired in 2016 November, and no coincidence, Arizona is playing well, and they have him on the helm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a situation. I played with Torey and under Torey in Cleveland's organization. But, you know, Torey's just one of those guys. He was in Boston. Mike Hazen got the job in Arizona. And then Mike Hazen, who had a relationship with Torey Lovello, brought him over and started the managerial thing there under him. Because, again, when you know somebody, you know what they bring to the table and you have continuity with them, it's a lot easier to go to work every day and understand what we need to do to build a ball club. The first year, I think they went to the playoffs, and Torey had a fantastic year. Then they started trading some guys, Goldschmidt, players like that, and they started rebuilding, and it hasn't been a real good go. But now they're back to the point where they've got a lot of young players. They've constructed that team to the style of baseball with these bigger bases and base stealing, and guys are fast and they cover the outfield and they're able to generate runs. They got some power in their lineup, and they're giving the Dodgers a real good run right now at the top of the leaderboard in the NL West. So Torey's done a fantastic job. He's got a 1-year extension that I just read out here in Arizona for the 2024 season. So he got rewarded for the early start of 2023 with these players. I'm sure he has a great rapport with a lot of these young guys because I know how Torey is, and I know what he brings to the table as far as a calmness as a manager, but the expectations are high, and guys love to play for him, and that's what you look for.
I gotta say that I'd like to see that kind of extension because I think it goes both ways. It secures for the team knowing they'll have the continuity no matter what, and for the manager as well. So a nice move from there. And when you look at the list, I'm gonna tell you, we're gonna look at this list in 5 to 10 years from now. We're gonna see these names. I'm not gonna promise you they're gonna be with the same teams, but I guarantee you these names are not gonna be going away. When you see a Bud Black, Dave Martinez, Aaron Boone, David Bell, Rocco Baldelli, Brandon Hyde, David Ross, and Gabe Kapler. Believe it or not, Gabe Kapler's already been there for a while. He signed in 2019, and some guys, they coach for a bit, they get the managerial job. And if you have a good perception of the game, players like you'll always find work.
So, can you do me a favor? Can you run down that list again and tell me what they all have in common?
What do all these guys have in common? Okay, so we got Bud Black,
Yep,
Dave Martinez,
yep,
Aaron Boone,
yep,
David Bell,
yep,
Rocco Baldelli,
yep,
Brandon Hyde,
yep,
David Ross, and Gabe Kapler.
yep.
Some kind of connecting link here. And man, I'm gonna shoot myself afterwards, but I'm gonna say all second generation players.
No, they all played in the big leagues, right?
Yes.
That's experience. They know what it takes to have the continuity. They know what it takes to be a player over 162 games. And there is an experience factor that is really hard to come by when you have players. When players know you've been there, done that, not that they don't respect guys who haven't been there, done that, but they know they've been in the situation before. So they can go to them for advice and say, hey, when this happened to you, it's really hard sometimes for a player to go to somebody, whether it be a pitching coach or a hitting coach, who maybe didn't play in a certain era or play in the big leagues, to gain that advice. And maybe that guy is only giving them analytical information, and which is great. But if you're only giving them analytical information and you're not giving them experience information, then sometimes players aren't as forthcoming or apt to follow in those footsteps and believe you what you're telling them because the experience factor isn't there. That's just my personal opinion from people who I've talked to and players who I've talked to over the course of my coaching career.
Did you get to spend much time with Dave Martinez ever in any ranks at all?
I played with Dave Martinez in 2001 in Atlanta.
So Dave Martinez has been around the game for about 80 years, it seems. As soon as he stopped playing, he's been coaching. I remember him being Joe Madden's right-hand man forever and ever and ever, following Joe around and eventually getting his own shot as a manager. Martinez seems like a guy, he just reads, sleeps, eats baseball all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Davey was very particular. Just being around him for the short time that I was in Atlanta for 3.5 months. He understands the game. He's smart about it, and like you said, he was under Joe Madden in Tampa, and got the opportunity to go and manage elsewhere, right? So at the end of the day, it's experience playing, experience learning from a guy that understands the game, and he took all of that knowledge in his playing days and was able to transfer that into a lead role as a manager, and it's treated him well.
I think he followed him to the Cubs as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think that they
I believe
won.
you're right.
I think they won together. Everywhere he went, he went. They
I
were
believe you're
all,
right. Yep.
yeah, it's amazing how that kind of works out. And I mean, so many of the names at the end of the day when you're looking up and down a list here, it's amazing. AJ Hinch came back with the Tigers. Dusty Baker's in the middle of the group there. He's been around since 2020
Mm-hmm.
with Houston. Buck Showalter seen a little bit on the hot seat right now. How many opportunities he's had in the big leagues, and what do you want the guy to do? There's injuries, but that's how the game works. It's a scary proposition. 1 minute you're the hero, and next minute you're the goat. So it's not the kind of good kind of goat either. So it'll be interesting to see when we start next season how many of these guys on the list are still intact, as in fact. And I dare say the ones that are closer to the top at this point, I think they're staying there. I don't think they're going anywhere. I mean, once you reach a certain level of tenure, unless you have a new ownership change or a completely different GM with a totally different philosophy, I think when you have that same stability group, I think that generally you do stay.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to the owner's decision. It's really not usually the general manager's decision. If a manager gets fired, they highly talk to each other from the front office to owner management, and then they make the decision there. It's always a hard decision, but sometimes a different voice is needed when things aren't going well. And it's part of the business. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you want to do your best no matter what position you're in, and sometimes it just doesn't work out.
And see, I would have guessed it's always the general manager. It's the general manager's right hand person onto the field. I would have never guessed that that would be more of an ownership type. So when it comes, because ownership, I always figured would be president, GM. Those are the two positions they're most focused on. So is it in fact owners typically? And I know every structure could be a little different, but unless you're Jerry Jones with the Cowboys, in which case you're just running everything.
Yeah.
But president, GM, manager then is typically the owner's decision more.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, it obviously the pecking order is owner, president of baseball operations, general manager, assistant general manager, and then it filters down into the front office and finally to the manager. But everybody's got to be on the same page. And if the owner wants you gone, you're gone.
So Pedro Grifol, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right, with the White Sox, Matt Cutraro with the Royals, and Skip Schumacher with the Marlins. When the owner calls you for dinner on a Sunday night, good idea to show up at the owner's house.
Yeah, it's pretty good. That would be a pretty good call. If you get a call, it could go both ways. It could be a nice call, or it could be a game-ending call.
But all the people near the end, it's funny, we're all hired around the same week or two of each other. And Bruce Bochy's right at the bottom there right now. But playing like this, I think Bochy's going to be up to the top. But again, he's also not going to want to play coach for another 20 years as far as from his end. I think he's going to be good for 3, 5 years, maybe groom, maybe eventually move to the front office again. I don't know. I mean, this guy has been around the game so long. I was shocked that he even took the job in the first place, to be honest.
Not me. I knew that he was looking for an opportunity, and then I think when this opportunity presented itself, because Boch was in San Diego when Chris Young was there, and when Chris Young got that job, I think he was able to sway him to come back and be part of something that he thought was going to be pretty special.
See, what Steve Karsay does when we're not talking, folks, and he's not sleeping or turning his son Kingston, he just puts his ear to the ground. And it's funny the baseball whispers that he hears. So that's why he's big money grip. Steve, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's fascinating, especially when you've played with them, coached with them, so many inside scoops. And every time I think I just got somebody that, I may stump you, turns out you know them. Just the way it works in this game, right?
Yeah, you said AJ Hinch. I played with him in Oakland too, so we just put that in there.
Of course, of course. A pleasure as always, my friend. Thank you so much. And for the fans, I'll say, you're spoiled for the amount of baseball knowledge and wisdom you get from Steve Karsay every week. Please share your questions, your comments. We'd love to hear from you with your interactions, and try to keep it clean as possible, obviously. And you never know when your questions are going to hit the airwaves. So on social media, on our YouTube channel, post your comments. We'll interact back, and let's get questions over to Steve Karsay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Send them in and we'll answer them the best we can. So it's been a pleasure as always to talk baseball with you and to dive deep into, some different categories and especially managers this week.
You never know if we're going to be talking about this career, current day, past. You never know where this thing's going to go. It's the chosen journey. It's baseball talk. And we'll see you back next week. And we'll have another fun topic for you.
Absolutely. See you next week.